For a correctional officer, the uniform is everything. It is more than just fabric, a badge, and a set of keys. It is a shield, a statement, a symbol of the fragile, razor-thin line that separates order from absolute chaos. When you choose to put it on each morning, you knowingly accept that you are a target. You are the physical embodiment of the authority that inmates, by their very nature, resent. But what happens when that symbol is defiled, when the respect it commands is systematically shattered, not by the hardened criminals you are paid to watch over, but by their families living in the world outside? What happens when the assault isn't a swift punch or a hidden shiv, but a slow, grinding campaign of psychological warfare, meticulously designed to dismantle you piece by piece in the public eye? One officer, a man who believed in the integrity of his uniform with every fiber of his being, thought a cruel, humiliating public campaign designed to break his spirit was just that, an attack on his reputation. He was tragically, catastrophically wrong. The moment he saw his own warden, the one man he should have been able to count on for backup, the leader of his institution, freeze in pure, unadulterated panic, he finally understood the truth. He realized the public degradation, the isolation, and the constant harassment weren't the attack at all. It was the perfect, elaborate, and terrifying cover for a secret so corrosive it was about to blow the entire prison apart from the inside out. Correctional Officer James Callahan wasn't a rookie, not by a long shot. He carried himself with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a man who had stared into the abyss of human nature and hadn't so much as flinched. For 5 long years, he had walked the echoing steel and concrete corridors of Northwood High Security Prison, a brutalist fortress designed to contain the state's most violent and dangerous individuals. In a world often governed by unwritten rules, backroom deals, and cynical compromises, Callahan was a rare breed, a by-the-book kind of guy. He was firm in his enforcement of the rules, but he was universally known to be fair in his application of them. In the volatile and complex ecosystem of a maximum security facility, that precise combination had earned him a hard-won, grudging respect from the men inside. He understood the inmates. He knew their intricate codes, their rigid hierarchies, their subtle tells. He just never imagined the real war would be declared from the outside. It began subtly, like a slow-acting poison introduced into his daily routine. At first, the incidents were small enough to ignore, the kind of low-grade friction inherent to the job. A muttered insult under the breath of a visitor he was patiently checking in. A venomous, lingering glare from a prisoner's wife as she was forced to pass through the metal detector a second time. Callahan was a professional. He had developed a thick skin and a steady hand over the years. He let it all roll off his back, attributing it to the ambient stress and simmering anger that clung to the prison's visiting hall like a foul, oppressive odor. He told himself it was just part of the territory, the cost of wearing the uniform. But then, the white noise of random hostility sharpened into a coordinated, deliberate signal. The campaign became organized, pointed, and deeply personal. It was no longer random acts of frustration. It was a targeted operation. One particularly busy Saturday afternoon, as the visiting room buzzed with a low hum of tense reunions and whispered conversations, a high-profile inmate's wife, a woman named Sophia, orchestrated a scene that stopped the entire room cold. She was impeccably dressed, her nails perfectly manicured, her face a mask of calculated indignation. She began shouting, her voice sharp and piercing, cutting through the din like a knife. She loudly and theatrically accused Officer Callahan of stealing a $20 bill that she claimed to have intentionally left on the check-in counter as a test. It was a blatant, audacious lie, a dramatic performance for a captive audience of other families, inmates, and staff who were all watching. The chaos she desired erupted instantly, with other visitors murmuring and pointing, the seeds of doubt expertly sown. Warden Thompson, a career administrator whose obsession with maintaining a pristine veneer of perfect order bordered on the pathological, was on the scene in moments. He wasn't a leader who projected strength, but a manager who projected control, and this public disturbance was an ugly smudge on his otherwise spotless record. He didn't pull the hysterical Sophia aside to de-escalate. He pulled Callahan aside. In full view of everyone, he didn't ask for Callahan's side of the story. He didn't bother to review the high-definition security camera footage that was aimed directly at the counter, footage that would have instantly and completely exonerated his officer. He just leaned in close, his voice a low hiss laced with undisguised irritation, and told him to be more careful with his perception. It wasn't advice, it was a command to make the problem, and his own discomfort, disappear. For Callahan, it was a stunning betrayal. There would be no investigation. There would be no justice. Just a public warning that felt like a slap in the face, a clear and unmistakable message that the warden's peace was infinitely more important than Callahan's integrity. A week later, the war escalated from the psychological to the physical. Callahan had just finished a grueling 16-hour double shift, his body aching from standing on concrete and his mind frayed from the constant, draining vigilance. He walked out into the pre-dawn chill of the staff parking lot, the air cold and damp against his skin. He found all 4 tires of his truck slashed, the rubber gaping open in ragged, violent wounds. The silence of the empty lot felt menacing. There was no note, no security cameras in this section, no proof, of course. But he knew. The cold, heavy certainty settled in his stomach like a lead weight. This was a message from Sophia's people. The next day, as he walked his post, an inmate from the same crew as Sophia's husband gave him a slow, smug grin as he passed. "Heard you had a long walk home, boss," the inmate murmured, his eyes gleaming with a shared, triumphant knowledge. The message was crystal clear. We can get to you outside these walls. The uniform can't protect you everywhere. He immediately reported the incident to Warden Thompson, whose office felt as sterile and cold as a refrigerator. The warden listened with a practiced, hollow look of impassive concern, his fingers steepled on his perfectly organized mahogany desk. A single, out-of-place paperclip would have seemed like a crisis in this meticulously curated space. When Callahan finished detailing the threat, Thompson's response was ice-cold and brutally dismissive. "It's a tough job, Callahan. You make enemies. It comes with a badge," he said, echoing the empty platitudes hung on the wall behind him. "File a police report and let them handle it." He offered no support, no internal follow-up, no shred of outrage that one of his officers had been targeted at his own workplace. He was washing his hands of it, treating Callahan not as a valued subordinate under attack, but as a problem to be managed and outsourced. These assaults became a twisted weekly ritual, each one more brazen and psychologically taxing than the last, each meticulously designed to isolate and break him. The inmates inside and their families outside were masters of their craft, using classic divide-and-conquer tactics to turn the prison staff against one another. An inmate might casually mention to a female officer how professional and respectful Callahan was, praising his demeanor. Hours later, that same inmate would complain to a male officer that Callahan was too harsh and had a dangerous problem with authority, planting insidious seeds of distrust and confusion among the ranks. But it was the families, orchestrated by Sophia, who were pulling the strings of the campaign. They began filing a constant barrage of bogus complaints that buried him in hours of internal reviews and paperwork. They'd forget their government-issued IDs to deliberately jam up his visitor processing line, then lodge formal, written complaints with the warden that Officer Callahan was inefficient, rude, and causing unacceptable delays. The pressure was immense and suffocating. Callahan felt like a pariah at his own job. The other officers, seeing that the warden clearly wasn't backing him up, began to keep their distance. No one wanted to be associated with a guy who was drawing heat from management. The casual camaraderie of the guard locker room, the gallows humor that made the job bearable, evaporated the moment he walked in. Conversations would stop mid-sentence. He ate his lunch alone. He was being totally, completely, and systematically isolated, dismantled in broad daylight while his superiors watched. But he had no idea this elaborate, painful spectacle was all just one big, terrifying distraction. This whole campaign was brutal, relentless, and psychologically exhausting, but years of working in a high-security environment had sharpened Callahan's senses to a razor's edge. He was trained to notice things other people miss, to see the subtle patterns buried in the chaos. In the middle of being the target of this all-consuming firestorm, he started seeing a pattern emerge from the smoke. The families causing the most trouble, filing the most complaints, and creating the most dramatic scenes weren't random. He spent his evenings at home, poring over notes, replaying the day's events. They were all connected to a single powerful group of inmates with deep-rooted organized crime ties. Sophia, the impeccably dressed woman from the $20 bill incident, wasn't just any visitor. She was the common-law wife of a major player in the syndicate. The most significant piece of the puzzle, the one that made his blood run cold, was the timing. The biggest disruptions, the loudest arguments, the most dramatic fake medical emergencies, the most egregious accusations, they always happened on the second Saturday of the month, during the peak visiting hours between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m. It was far too consistent to be a coincidence. An argument here, a fake fainting spell there, anything to cause a panic, to get the guards running, and to focus all attention and resources in one specific area of the visitors' hall. Callahan started watching the background instead of the main event. He began to treat the loud, staged emergencies as a magician's misdirection, and he forced himself to look at the hand the audience wasn't supposed to see. And that's when he finally saw it. During a particularly massive screaming match started by Sophia over a supposed slight, every officer in the visiting hall converged on her, a sea of gray uniforms trying to de-escalate the manufactured crisis. But Callahan, whose instincts were now screaming at him, deliberately held back, positioning himself at the edge of the room. He looked away from the chaos. Across the crowded, noisy room, he saw another inmate's grandmother, a seemingly frail, harmless-looking old woman who always brought cookies for the staff, quietly slip a thick, manila envelope to a low-level prison clerk named Carol. The clerk, a young woman who handled visitor logs and property claims, nervously palmed it, her eyes darting around the room. In a flash, she slipped it into a stack of official files on her cart. It was a contraband drop, happening right under everyone's nose, perfectly shielded by the very chaos that was meant to discredit him. Suddenly, it all clicked into place with a sickening, gut-wrenching clarity. The humiliation campaign wasn't about breaking him personally. It was about controlling the room. It was about creating a predictable, recurring blind spot in the prison security. By keeping Callahan and the other officers stressed, distracted, and hyper-focused on a single rotating problem, they created the perfect cover for their real operation, a sophisticated, high-volume smuggling ring. The families were the mules, bringing in the goods during the busiest hours. A compromised clerk was helping to bypass the logbooks and process the goods internally. But the next thought sent an undeniable chill down Callahan's spine. A low-level clerk couldn't move major contraband through a high-security prison alone. Someone much higher up had to be involved, someone who could ensure the packages made it past the final checkpoints. Someone who could control the guards' posts and schedules to ensure the right people were in the right places at the right time. Someone like the warden. The next second Saturday, the air in the prison was thick with an almost electric anticipation. Callahan felt it in his bones. This was the day it would all come to a head. As predicted, a diversion exploded in the visiting yard, but this one was different. It was a massive, violent brawl between rival gangs, a full-blown riot simulation that drew every single available officer to the scene. It was the biggest, loudest, and most convincing diversion yet, a masterpiece of criminal choreography. But Callahan stayed back, his heart pounding against his ribs like a drum, his eyes locked on the now-quiet visitors' hall. He was betting his entire career, everything he had worked for, on this one dangerous hunch. Just as he suspected, Sophia was there, but she wasn't shouting or causing a scene. She was calm, waiting patiently in a quiet corridor near the administrative offices, a place strictly off-limits to visitors without an escort. A moment later, Warden Thompson appeared, walking briskly from his office. There was no argument. There were no theatrics. Just a quiet, tense exchange. Sophia handed the warden a large, heavy-looking package wrapped in plain brown paper. At that exact, fateful moment, a regional executive from the prison's parent company, a man named Peters who was there for a routine and unannounced quarterly inspection, rounded the corner and saw everything. His sharp, intelligent eyes darted from the illicit exchange to Officer Callahan, who was standing watch from a distance. His gaze met Callahan's for a fraction of a second, an instant of silent understanding. Then he stared directly at Warden Thompson, his face hardening like granite. The warden froze. The meticulously crafted mask of the tough, unshakable administrator, the man obsessed with perception and order, didn't just crack, it melted away completely, leaving the raw, terrified face of a man caught in an inescapable trap. His eyes were wide with a pure, primal panic. He looked at the incriminating package in his hands, at the stone-faced executive, and then at Officer Callahan, the man he had tried so hard to break. And in that one deafening moment of dead silence, the entire conspiracy came crashing down. The warden wasn't just ignoring the corruption. He wasn't just complicit in it. He was at the very center of it, running the entire operation. The crushing silence was shattered by the sound of the executive, Peters, pulling out his phone and dialing. His voice was calm but laced with steel, the voice of a man taking absolute and immediate command. "Get me corporate security and the state police. We have a Code Zero situation at Northwood. Effective immediately, I am taking control of this facility." The warden, pale and shaking, dropped the package as if it were burning him. It hit the polished linoleum floor with a heavy, sickening thud. For him, it was over. The entire elaborate campaign against Callahan was nothing more than an intricate cover for a massive contraband operation run by the one man whose sworn duty was to stop it. Peters, the regional executive, moved with the swift, decisive efficiency of a field general. The prison went into an immediate facility-wide lockdown, a move that froze everyone and everything in place, preventing any evidence from being destroyed or any conspirator from escaping. Soon after, an external investigative body, not local police, but a specialized task force of federal agents and corporate investigators, launched a surprise raid. While prisons can often brace for scheduled audits, a surprise top-to-bottom inspection by an outside agency is their worst nightmare. Investigators who had been briefed by Peters swarmed northward, now knowing exactly what and who they were looking for. The clerk, Carroll, folded within the first hour of interrogation. Faced with a mountain of evidence, the threat of serious federal charges, and the daunting reality of her situation, she laid out the entire scheme in exhaustive detail. She explained how the families would smuggle in high-end electronics, uncut narcotics, and even disassembled weapon components, often disguised as legal mail or personal property being sent in for inmates. Her job was to alter the digital and paper logs, creating a clean, legitimate entry for contraband that was then diverted to a secure drop point. From there, a guard loyal to the warden would collect the items and deliver them directly to the syndicate members inside. The warden's corruption was deeper and more extensive than anyone could have possibly imagined. The investigation revealed that an outside crime syndicate was paying him a fortune, depositing hundreds of thousands of dollars into offshore accounts to ensure their incarcerated members lived like kings. He gave them preferential treatment, access to restricted areas, private cells, and, most importantly, a steady and reliable flow of goods and communication with the outside world. Humiliating Callahan wasn't just a diversion, it was a strategic move suggested by Thompson himself. It served two critical purposes. It kept a good, observant officer off balance and buried in paperwork, and it gave the warden a ready-made scapegoat if anything ever went wrong, a bitter, disgruntled officer making crazy accusations against a superior, and in the end, Warden Thompson and several of his hand-picked guards were arrested on sight. In a stunning spectacle of reversed fortunes, they were led out of the prison in handcuffs, paraded in front of the very inmates they once lorded over, who hooted and jeered from their cells. They faced a battery of federal charges, including bribery, money laundering, and enterprise corruption under the RICO Act, serious crimes that have taken down powerful mob bosses and corrupt officials alike. Sophia and the other key family members involved in the smuggling and harassment campaign were also indicted as co-conspirators. The prison's entire power structure was publicly and spectacularly dismantled, destined to be rebuilt from the ground up. Callahan was the man who had single-handedly unraveled it all. He was hailed as a hero by the new administration. Peters, the executive, called him into the warden's now vacant office, the room still feeling cold and impersonal. He offered Callahan a significant promotion, a chance to be a key part of running the new, reformed Northwood. Callahan, looking out the window at the prison yard, turned it down without a moment's hesitation. He had paid too high a price. The deep, stinging betrayal from his own boss, the sharp pain of being ostracized by his peers, and the soul-crushing feeling of being completely and utterly alone had killed his faith in the system he had once sworn to uphold. The uniform no longer felt like a symbol of honor. It felt like a costume in a dirty, broken theater. He tendered his resignation a month later, quietly walking away from the world of concrete and steel for good. Justice, in the strictest legal sense, had been served. The bad guys were going to prison. But for the man who brought them all down, the victory was hollow, leaving an acidic taste in his mouth. It had cost him his career, his sense of purpose, and his belief in the very idea of the thin blue line. It leaves you to wonder, doesn't it? Do you think justice was truly served in the end, or did Officer Callahan lose too much in the process? In the morally ambiguous world of corrections, the line between right and wrong can become incredibly, dangerously blurry. Sometimes the biggest threat isn't the person wearing an inmate's jumpsuit. It's the one wearing a tailored suit in the warden's office. Officer Callahan won the battle, exposing the rot at the very heart of his institution. But in doing so, he lost the war for his own career and his own peace of mind. His story is a chilling reminder that even when you win, you don't always walk away whole. And the systems we build to maintain order are only as strong and as honorable as the integrity of the people who run them.